ever since I was a child, I loved telling stories, and I wanted to be a writer. So that was kind of my dream growing up. And but even since before I learned how to read and write, I would just like to tell stories, and tell stories to my parents or to my friends or to my family. And I wanted to study creative writing, but that didn't exist in Colombia as a college major when I was growing up. So I also loved adventure, and I loved like anthropology and archaeology, and my country is very diverse, and I have traveled a lot, like a lot of car trips with my family. We have the Caribbean coast and the Pacific, and we have the Amazons, and we have the Andes Mountains. So I grew up traveling, and in each of these areas, there are like people from different cultures. We have a lot of different indigenous populations. We have African, Colombian. And so I thought, well, I'll study anthropology, archaeology, and I'll go and discover pyramids or something. I wanted to teach myself how to tell a story visually. So I did like an independent study in which I make a short, a 10-minute film only with images. I didn't have any dialogue because I wanted to focus in developing the skill of using the image to tell the story. And I chose a story about my memories of Christmas in Colombia, because we didn't have Santa Claus. We had Niño Dios, which is the equivalent to baby Jesus. And it was like this magical thing. Like I don't think I was ever aware that it had a religious connotation, because I was raised agnostic. Like on my father's side, they were atheists, and my mother's side, they were agnostic. So we had Christmas presents, but I never, it was not a religious thing. So anyway, so I made this short film that 12 minutes, and then that 12-minute film changed my life, because it turned out to be really good, and it gave me the confidence that I knew how to tell the stories with images, and that I had stories to tell, and that I had a way to tell them. So it was a big change from first one to second one. The movie is based on a true story about my grandfather, who was one of the first doctor in Colombia to do cataract illness operations, and that was in the 1920s. And he operated on a man who was blind, and who used to carry the water from the mountains to the village because there was no running water. And he operated on him, and and he was in the dining room table of his house, and he had to import the instruments from Germany, and he practiced with cow eyes, and like he would go to the butcher and buy the eyes of the cows, and he practiced with that. And so he did the surgery, and my grandmother was the nurse, and the blind man gained back his sight. The playwright Josefina, she's like such a good collaborator. She's like so open, and she completely trusted me. So she was like, like she would be there. Like I love having her on set, and she would be there. And then I would ask her ideas, but if I didn't ask, she wouldn't give them to me. And she also didn't go to set very often. Sometimes I would send my assistant director to pick her up and bring her, because I wanted her there. It changed, to open it up so that it was not just in the factory. So like creating characters outside of the factory, putting scenes in different places. It was also the version that I got. It was a little bit like the humor was very different. It was kind of, remember like the character of Anna, every time she would say, "Oh, I'm just a fat Mexican girl," and she was like very like self-deprecating and always saying things like that I didn't like. Just I wanted something more grounded. I love the humor, but I wanted something more grounded. And I'm talking with Josefina, because part of my job as a director is to understand the story from the writer. And for her it was very difficult to talk about her mother, even though her mother, like in the story, was really mean, but she would never say anything bad about her mother. So it took me a while to understand where she was coming from and how to tell that story in a way that was like more truthful, like, and more respectful of the characters instead of putting the characters down. That's the scene I was more scared of, because for me it was super important to show, to have the audience laugh with the characters and not at the characters. Yeah. So, and I knew I wanted the women to look beautiful and to feel beautiful. So that's something that I work with the costume designers so that they could choose their own underwear that they really felt comfortable with. And with my DP, like, with Jim, it's like, what can we do? What type of lenses, and what type of, some filters, and with the makeup people, with everyone. So I prepare in that sense. And then, having the women getting undressed, it's not easy either. So like we rehearse and everything, went really well during rehearsal. And then on the day of the shooting, actually, I also bought me really nice underwear because I thought, well, if need be, I'll go in my underwear too. But fortunately, I didn't have to do that. There is something too, like, my mother is an architect and she was a professor of architecture. And I will always remember one thing that she said is like, she would say that many of the students would ask her how to do architecture that is like for our culture, for the Colombian culture. And she told the students, well, whatever you do is going to have your culture. And she was right. I think that anything that I do, it does have my culture. And, even when I direct like episodes of series that doesn't have anything to do with my culture, like I bring it with me in the way that I approach people, the way that I direct.